Imagine you finally have everything you thought you needed. Enough money to feel secure, people who love you, a successful career, recognition for what you've accomplished. Would you finally feel fulfilled? Or would you simply start wanting something else? In the 20th century, a psychologist named Abraham Maslow became fascinated by a question that was surprisingly different from what most psychologists were asking. Instead of asking only why do people suffer, Maslow wanted to understand what allows human beings to become the best version of themselves. His answer would become one of the most recognizable ideas in psychology: Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But there was much more to Maslow than the famous pyramid. His ideas might change how you think about happiness, success, and what it means to live a fulfilling life. Abraham Maslow was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1908 to Jewish immigrant parents. His childhood wasn't particularly easy. He was the eldest of 7 children, and he often felt isolated and different from the people around him. Maslow later described himself as lonely and unhappy during his youth. He found refuge in books, and perhaps this early experience shaped one of the questions that would follow him for the rest of his life. What allows a human being to flourish? Maslow initially studied law because his father wanted him to pursue a practical career. But he soon discovered that his real interest was psychology. He eventually earned his doctorate in psychology and began studying human behavior. But there was a problem. The psychology of his time was dominated by 2 major schools of thought. One focused heavily on unconscious drives and psychological conflict. The other focused on observable behavior and how rewards and punishments shape us. Maslow thought both approaches were missing something. They were very good at explaining what could go wrong with human beings. But what about what could go right? Maslow became one of the important figures associated with humanistic psychology. His approach began with a simple but radical idea. Human beings aren't just problems to be solved. We also have the capacity to grow, to create, to love, to discover meaning, and to become more fully ourselves. Maslow became interested in exceptionally healthy and creative people. He studied people he believed demonstrated qualities such as independence, creativity, honesty, and a strong sense of purpose. Instead of asking, "What makes people mentally ill?" he asked, "What does a psychologically healthy person look like?" This shift was enormously important. Because if psychology only studies illness, we learn how people break down. But if we also study flourishing, perhaps we can learn how people thrive. This brings us to the idea almost everyone associates with Maslow. It's the hierarchy of needs. You've probably seen the pyramid. At the bottom are physiological needs: food, water, sleep, basic physical survival. Above those are safety and security, then belonging and love, then esteem, things like confidence, achievement, and recognition. And near the top is self-actualization, the desire to become what Maslow believed you were capable of becoming. But here's something important. The pyramid you see everywhere today wasn't actually presented by Maslow in exactly that form. The familiar 5-level pyramid became a popular way of illustrating his ideas later. Maslow's original theory was more nuanced, and he wasn't saying that human beings must perfectly complete one level before moving to the next. Real life is much messier. We can care about relationships while we're struggling financially. We can create art while we're afraid. We can search for meaning during difficult circumstances. The hierarchy is better understood as a way of thinking about the different needs that influence human motivation. And the highest idea is where Maslow gets especially interesting. Self-actualization doesn't simply mean becoming rich, famous, or successful. It means becoming more fully what you are capable of being. For one person, that might mean creating art. For another, raising a family. For another, discovering something new. For another, helping other people. It's not a single achievement, it's a process of growth. And this leads to an important distinction. You can be successful without feeling fulfilled, without knowing who you really are. Without knowing who you really are, you can have comfortable surroundings and still feel that something is missing. Maslow believed that once our more basic needs are sufficiently satisfied, we often begin asking deeper questions. Who am I? What am I capable of? What do I want to contribute? What kind of person do I want to become? These questions aren't about survival anymore. They're about meaning. Maslow's research into psychologically healthy people led him to notice certain qualities. These questions aren't about survival anymore. They're about meaning. Maslow's research into psychologically healthy people led him to notice certain qualities. He believed self-actualizing people tended to accept themselves and others more realistically. They weren't constantly trying to impress everyone. They could appreciate ordinary experiences. They were often creative. They had a sense of purpose. And perhaps most importantly, they were willing to live according to their own values rather than simply conforming to what society expected. This doesn't mean they were perfect. Maslow didn't imagine self-actualized people as permanently happy, calm, or flawless. They could still experience sadness, frustration, conflict, and failure. The difference was that they were more capable of living authentically. And that may be one of Maslow's most valuable ideas. Fulfilling life isn't necessarily a life without problems. It may be a life in which you're becoming more fully yourself. Maslow later became interested in something else he called peak experiences. These are moments when people feel intensely alive, connected, inspired, or absorbed. They might happen while creating something, listening to music, experiencing nature, falling in love, making an important discovery, helping someone, or simply experiencing a moment of profound clarity. For a brief moment, ordinary concerns seem to fade into the background. Time can feel different. You become completely absorbed in the experience. Maslow believed these moments could reveal something important about human potential. And they don't necessarily come from wealth or achievement. Sometimes they happen during very ordinary moments. A conversation, a walk, a piece of music, a creative project, a moment with someone you love. Which raises an interesting question. If some of the most meaningful experiences in life can't be bought, then what are we actually chasing when we pursue more and more? Maslow's ideas became enormously influential, but they aren't without criticism. Researchers have questioned whether human needs really follow a universal hierarchy. Different cultures may prioritize needs differently, and people don't always move through needs in a neat upward progression. Someone might sacrifice safety for love. Someone might create something extraordinary while living in poverty. Someone might have wealth and security, but still feel profoundly unhappy. So the pyramid shouldn't be treated like a strict scientific staircase. It's better understood as a framework for thinking about human motivation and potential. And perhaps that's why the idea has lasted. Because even if the pyramid isn't a perfect map of human psychology, the question behind it remains powerful. We live in a culture that constantly tells us to improve. Get a better job, earn more, become more productive, buy something better, build a better life. And there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting those things. But Maslow invites us to ask a different question. Better for what? What happens when achievement becomes the goal rather than the tool? What happens when we spend so much time trying to build an impressive life that we forget to ask whether the life actually feels meaningful? Maybe fulfillment isn't simply about reaching the next level. Maybe it's about understanding what you're climbing toward, and perhaps that's what makes Maslow's work so enduring. He reminded psychology that human beings aren't merely creatures trying to avoid pain. We're also creatures trying to create, to understand, to love, to grow, and to become. Abraham Maslow spent his career asking a deceptively simple question. What does a human being need to become fully alive? His answer wasn't simply food, or money, or security, or success. Those things matter, but they may not be the end of the story. So once we have enough to survive, another question begins to emerge. What are we going to do with the life we've been given? And perhaps the most interesting part of Maslow's hierarchy isn't the bottom, but the possibility at the top. Not becoming perfect, not becoming famous, not becoming better than everyone else, but becoming more fully yourself. So perhaps the question worth asking isn't, what else do I need? But, who am I capable of becoming?